And welcome back to Morning Express. We are glad you're watching the show that has got your morning covered in all that you need to know every morning, 7:24 a.m. The newsroom is all good to go. Joined this morning by the county's editor in the Standard. I need to be introducing you guys properly. Martin Mutua. Patrick Gadara is back. So last week we were engaging with you on Twitter feeds, but we're glad you could join us. Cartoonist, blogger, writer.
All of those.
All of those and others.
And more.
Activists. We also have, of course, Clay Muganda, who's Standard on Sunday features editor and a writer as well. It's good to be part of the Standard, don't you think?
Jump ship.
Gentlemen, let's get to the story that has captured, the nation and even beyond. We've been lead story on BBC for a while as well. The Mpeketoni attacks Sunday night, they take place Monday morning. Details are slowly trickling in. I remember being here and speaking to the police spokesperson who talked about 14 dead at about 7 or 8 a.m. But, minutes later we spoke to our reporter and, Ferdinand, and he was telling us of 48. Let's talk about how we've covered it, because I think Gadara, who would bash as usually, you can give credit compared to how the police were responding to this on the media, man. We did good.
I think the coverage has been a bit better than our previous attacks. I think there hasn't been the usual sort of rallying behind the government line. And I think that's actually a good sign that people are starting to wake up and get away from a simple regurgitation of government propaganda. I mean, I've just seen in the Standard they have a list of questions in Standard Nation that the government needs to answer. So I mean, it's good when these guys are taken to task over the statements that they make and the inconsistencies in it. What I think I would like to see, and perhaps we'll discuss this a bit more later, is a more sustained and investigation of the background to this. There are questions about the financing of the security services. There are issues to do with the propensity for government to distract as opposed to actually investigate attacks and do things. But for now, I would say I'm quite encouraged by the response from the press.
Okay, yeah. Clay.
Gadara is giving credit, eh? That's news.
That is big.
I think the coverage was good. I mean, and I'm not saying this because I'm a journalist, but I think the coverage generally was good because what's been happening is that people did not just accept whatever the government said, and people started asking questions even before the government actually issued a statement. They already started asking questions. I mean, what is this? What is going on? And stuff like that. How come the government has not responded? And this is, I think it's a build-up. It's a build-up of based on the attacks that have been happening before, and people have been wondering, like, what's going on. People have been asking questions, but I think this one, the way it happened, I think people decided, like, now we can't wait anymore. We have to ask all the questions. And I think generally, because we have even journalist accounts, personal accounts, the people who are going there. Right. It's been good. The coverage is good. I think so.
Okay, yeah. Martin, with this coverage, there are various angles to it, from what now we're hearing the president saying from his statement yesterday to, some of the stories. There's the question of MRC and whether it comes into play, the question of intelligence and whether there was or there wasn't, those officers being, transferred and those who are going to be investigated. Have we painted the full picture for our viewers in terms of the media? And as far as the story goes?
First, as it was unfolding, Sophia, I was watching you when you went live, and it was very depressing that when you spoke to the police spokeswoman and she was talking of 14, yet we were in touch with our guy on the ground because this is something that happened overnight. And when we spoke to him, he said they had already counted 40 bodies. So I was wondering, where was the police getting their information while we were getting a different information? The guys on the ground had already had 40 bodies, and the police only saw 14. So you see the kind of, for me, it's like it's bad for when you have such a tragedy and the police try to suppress information. And because if we had not insisted on the number that we were giving, even live, I don't think the police would have changed. They would have gone with bits and bits of trying to show us that this thing is not of very high magnitude, which is wrong. So I think, for once, I think Gadara has seen the light. And he has at least given us some credit, which is good.
Yeah. But
I think it's something that we continue to stay on it and be sure that we are able to deal with it the way it comes in. But I was a bit very concerned with the president's statement yesterday, let me tell you. For me, that statement was a mistake. And it is when we are dealing with a problem of this magnitude, it's wrong for, I believe even the advisors to the president, for me, did not do a good job in terms of him coming out and speaking the way he's speaking. Because on one side, we are hearing Al-shabaab have already owned up to this issue. And you saw even the countries in from the international community were condemning these acts because they are talking about, they already saw that Al-shabaab had already confirmed that they have taken responsibility.
How did they confirm? There's a tweet that went out. Is that what did the media go by, the confirmation of Al-shabaab?
The media went by, even by the information, you can get it from anywhere. From the social media, from Al-shabaab, you will not expect them to come out and give a press conference to tell you that we are responsible.
How sure are you about those accounts?
They would not, if Al-shabaab would not take responsibility of an issue which they are not part of it, they would never do that. Okay. They would never want to be if they are responsible for it, they will tell you they are responsible. If they are not, they will not want to take credit for something they are not. So. And terrorism is something that we cannot try to tribalize or to trivialize. It's something that needs concerted efforts of all of us, the locals, foreigners, and everybody, because this is not an organized thing that you can say you can confront it like an army that is you're going to deal with it. These are people who are using they're even prepared to die for themselves, I mean for the sake of killing others. So you need all sorts of support that you can galvanize to be able to confront this. Because
the other argument that would be made, gentlemen, is it's very easy to, Al-shabaab any attack, say it's Al-shabaab, a Twitter account will be somewhere, somebody will tweet and say that. Because I've listened to other analysts who have argued, even way before the president came out and said it's not Al-shabaab, that perhaps it isn't. It's easy, because we're discussing about their style and all. Yes, they have claimed responsibility, but how clear is that? And when you run away with that narrative, and then the government is saying this one, how do you ensure that at the end of the day you're remaining balanced and giving both sides of the story?
If I may say something, I think one thing you need to understand about the Al-shabaab is they do have a pretty sophisticated media operation. Okay. When they claim responsibility, it's not just a tweet. They do have a press officer sends out a statement, as they did in this case. And most of the agencies, whether it's Reuters or BBC or AP and stuff, have ways of verifying who. Secondly, Al-shabaab have a Radio Andalus, which is actually a radio station they control, which they broadcast on. And they claim responsibility twice, don't forget, on this. And then thirdly, as far as I'm aware, and as far as everybody I've spoken to is aware, there's never been a case where Al-shabaab has claimed responsibility for something and it turned out they didn't do it. So while you can't totally disregard the idea that they didn't, that they're just claiming credit for something that they didn't do, the preponderance, I think, of the evidence, and where I think what is believable most is that they actually carried it out. On the other hand, I mean, the government does have a big credibility problem. Lots of times they've said stuff that is not true. Look at their response to other attacks, to Westgate, which has been more about distraction, about avoiding dealing with real issues, about pointing fingers, whether it's at Somalis or at refugees, stuff. So the government has a track record of trying to distract from the real problems. And in this case, and given the statement yesterday and the tone of the statement, and also what Olelenku said before, it seemed clear that from the beginning they were determined to paint this as something to do with the
politics,
with the politics, you know. And it's interesting when the president says they know that who these political networks are, and nobody gets arrested, nobody gets charged. You know, should raise quite a number of questions.
I mean, for me, it's not even a question of who probably did it, and okay, can come to that later. But here the government admits, the government is admitting that we failed, and at the same time apportioning blame, because they're saying that we knew of this attack, and all these stories that all the stories that have been aired, all the stories in today's papers, I mean, they knew of the attack. My biggest problem is, why wasn't it stopped? Okay, fine. Let's say, for argument's sake, to defend the government, local politicians are involved. Local politicians are even easier to arrest. Why weren't they stopped? I mean, like 3 days before, all these stories paint to that. And actually the government actually admits that they knew about this. And I mean, the idea of going to suspend some junior officers on the ground, it beats logic completely, because power flows from the top. I mean,
don't forget, on was it yesterday or the day before, when Olelenku gave his first statement, he said he was going to Mpeketoni to take personal charge.
And the day
of
after,
it, and the day after, I mean, the morning after we had the attack. So if they're going to blame junior officers for the first one, then definitely
for the second one. But at the same time, I mean, like if you watched when Mr. Kenyatta was speaking out there and telling Kenyans that this is what is happening, that kind of defending the cabinet secretaries and the other people in parliament or in the Senate, they were actually passing a motion. They were actually more or less like censuring Lenku. You see, so the government itself does not know, the small finger does not know what the thumb is doing, you see. So I think it's speaking from both ends of the mouth, and it's quite sad.
Well, actually, Sophia, before when Olelenku made his statement earlier, I was very furious, and a lot of people were furious. They really wanted to hang Olelenku. But when the president came and spoke, actually we realized this is the same script, that Olelenku is just a messenger of what the top thinks. So it is a well choreographed script that this is the line we are determined to take. But more fundamentally, my thinking is that the people who have lost their lives, the families that have lost their lives, they do not want to be told who the government suspects has done this. The questions they are asking, where was the government to stop this kind of thing? It happened for over 4-5 hours. Our town has been taken hostage in this Republic of Kenya that has a national government and a county government. And we had all these kinds of machinery. And we have a naval base. I was watching my colleague John Allen illustrating Manda Island, where the naval ship, base is, where definitely, and there was no communication even with those are the guys who could have responded very fast with their speedboats and even been able to be there on time. Nothing.
It's a complete breakdown.
How do you explain that? So when the president comes and stands and starts talking the way he's talking, honestly, the people who are handling him are making him look bad. They're making him look like he's totally lost control. He does not know what is happening in this country. So that you start now looking for things you can grapple with and be able to hold on to. That is very wrong. They are doing disservice to the president, and the president must start to realize that then the country is not crazy to ask for the entire overhaul of the security, starting from the top. Not these junior officers that they are claiming to suspend. If they had intelligence information of an execution or a massacre is going to happen, how do you share that information with the chief inspector and you sit back pretty and wait? to expect him to execute.
Because again, Westgate, there was intelligence.
Yes, there should have been a thorough operation in terms of how to mitigate this issue, because it would have taken the entire force in Mombasa, even from Nairobi. They should have taken command if they had information of what is happening, is going to happen. Then you now use this as a scapegoat to try and go and punish some junior police officers there because you claim you gave them intelligence information. This is uncalled for. It is unacceptable. And those people who are being punished there have no business being punished. The people who need to be punished are from the top. Well, you need to deal with the Director of Intelligence. You need to deal with the Minister in charge of Internal Security. You need to deal with the Inspector General of Police. These are the people where the blame must be put squarely. And if it doesn't go there, it goes back to the President himself. But believe me, these are issues we are going to talk about. Nothing is going to happen to this.
Why is it the case that such things happen? People die, many people, even just one life, that should not happen without any accountability, without some form of, at least we've learned our lessons and moved on. Clearly we haven't learned lessons.
Well, we don't learn lessons, and this is going back to the coverage. One of the things that I've been saying for a long time is we simply don't insist on learning the lessons. After Westgate, till today, we don't have an official account of what happened for those 4 days inside there. President promised a public inquiry into it. We never said it. The only inquiry was done by Parliament that was thrown out. So we don't have an official record. So what are we learning? And what I would say is, for now, it's quite important, especially given the spin that the President is putting on this. It's quite important that we start insisting on getting that inquiry, looking at all the failures that have happened, because it's not just Mpeketoni, it's not just Westgate. We've had over 80 attacks, but according to the police themselves, in the last 4 years. So where are the failures? These are systemic failures. It's not just a one-off here and there. So we need to go back and insist, let's have a proper inquiry into all of this, looking into all of these issues, from the financing of our security forces. I mean, I just saw in today's Standard that the presidency spent more on cars, over 4 times more on cars, than they did on training and vehicles for security forces. The First Lady gets a higher budget for hospitality than the anti-terror police unit. We have to say there is a problem. And let's go and look at it in a wholesome format. And go back, look at where the failures have been, have a proper inquiry, and then we can actually start discussing what the solutions are.
I think
Claire, as you respond, quite a number of tweets here are accusing this panel of being biased. We have Lowell Waititu talking about being called sympathizers.
I was just coming to that because right now what is happening is it's very difficult to speak as a Kenyan, because when you do that, there's this people always think like
you're biased.
You're biased. They think, the government tends to think like everybody is against them, so you're only supposed to sing praises. I mean, which is actually wrong. Yes, we can stay here and we can sit here and sing praises all through, but there are 52 people who died in Mpeketoni. We are not lying. It is a fact. You see, you cannot deny that fact. You cannot deny the fact that the police officers were actually telling people before that, don't go to Mpeketoni, things are bad. It is a fact that they had information before, they had intelligence before this thing happened. So it's not anything like anybody who actually tries to think like if you don't defend the government, then you're probably somebody else sympathizer. They're the guys who are lying to the government. And this is what I keep on saying. There's too many people, far too many, and I'm sorry to use this, there are far too many riffraffs talking for the government. And actually, sadly, the government tends to believe them. There are far too many people, the so-called analysts and thinkers, who talk for the government. And that's why I insist I'm not a political analyst. And the funny thing is that the government tends to believe them, because when somebody tells you, like, this is not the footprint of Al-shabaab, tell me then whose footprint is it? When did you ever know, like, this is how Al-shabaab does things? Because if anything, the only other thing Al-shabaab claimed is Westgate. Al-Shabaab, there are international news agencies, the APs and the Reuters, actually which confirmed this, that this report came from Al-Shabaab. So who are you sitting somewhere in some place or running around between government offices looking for tenders, coming to tell people that this is not Al-Shabaab? I mean, I think it's very annoying. It's very annoying that there are 52 people who have died and somebody is telling you that you're so sympathizer. I mean, the government needs to shore up its communication.
Yeah, because if you're going to say it's not Al-Shabaab, then bring out who it is.
Exactly.
Name them, let them be taken.
And they say they have evidence,
bring the evidence, exactly.
They say they have evidence.
Because that is the way to regain that confidence.
Absolutely.
From
You can't. You see, like Clay saying, there are 52 people dead. Lying there.
And you
I even saw at the Senate yesterday, Janet Ongera saying 12 of them are from Kisii. You heard what the president said. That's why I'm very disturbed.
I mean, ethnic
Uhuru Kenyatta is my friend, and I beseech him again. He should not take this kind of route. When he's trying to say that there's a well-orchestrated move to deal with a certain community in that particular area, you see, you have opened as a national leader. Even if you knew that kind of information, it's not an issue you need.
That is not what to say to the nation.
Actually, right now, it is the government that is inciting people.
Yeah, because now you entrench the very same thing you're trying to.
Absolutely, and you're profiling, and you're even endangering the people that you think you're trying to safeguard, because now you have already profiled a particular community. I didn't know that there was certain community being targeted. In this day and age, in a particular area in Mombasa, I don't think so. Even if you had that information, why can't you deal with the people whom you're saying are behind this? What we needed to have seen is that probably the president would have said, when he came on TV, certain actions had already been taken. The people who they're saying that they already know who did plan and did all these things are already in jail. Then we'd be able to understand. But you're telling us all this, you're leaving us more confused, yet you have divided our minds so much. It even makes things worse for us. So it's not the best thing that a national leader would come on the podium and talk about it. And we must diffuse this kind of thinking within ourselves, because even you find professionals thinking in terms of their tribal cocoons. We must remove this kind of thinking from our minds when we are addressing an issue. It's not about Uhuru Kenyatta coming from a particular area. He's our president. We must accept that. And when things go wrong, we must tell him the truth. And that's why I liked what some of the Jubilee MPs, when they went to State House, they told him, Bill Okero and Jimmy Angwenyi, Zakao Cheriot and the others, who told him to his face, this is the situation on the ground, and you must deal with these issues. This issue of trying to lie to the president all the time so that you win favors does not help. It's better to tell the president what is the truth so that he can deal with it.
May I say something? I think, you've kind of hinted to it twice, but it's something I don't agree with. There's a way we talk in Kenya where we try to insulate the president from the consequences of his decisions, and we say it is about his advisors and the people who talk to him and stuff. In the end, he is responsible. He's
the one Kenyans elected.
Those advisors.
Buck
stops with him. You know, and the statement he gave yesterday, atrocious as it was, is all about him. He chooses to do that, to say that. You know, so in the end, I think he needs to stand up, and if he really wants to, as I said, I was tweeting yesterday, to stop ruling and actually start leading, he needs to own up to the problems and the failures that have been there all along since 2011 with our security, you know, coming all the way till now. He needs to own up to the problems that are there. He said himself that there is a problem with the resourcing of our security. You know, he promised change. For that, well, when he's spending more money on cars for his guys at State House than he's giving to security services, that is not change. You know, he needs to own up to it, and he needs to say that it is him, you know, not somebody else. You know, and then when it comes to the security machinery, as I said, we need to have a proper independent public inquiry, a credible inquiry that exposes and says this is where our problems lie, these are the systemic issues, you know, and then we go about resolving those. But right now everybody is going to take a sort of not coordinated measures in resolving it. We're going to say, okay, get rid of Olelenku, fine, Olelenku goes. But the rot that's within the system is not addressed because it's never exposed.
Somebody is asking, what if JMO says what the president said was true?
Okay, fine. The thing is, it could be true. There's no, why wasn't it stopped? The whole problem here is not who did it, whether it was done by a fly or whether it was done by Al-shabaab or whether it was done by the US
And I guess his spirit is coming from the point of politics, and you're saying then they should be arrested.
Well, of course, here's my point.
They should have been arrested. Even before we should have been in jail.
Is it any less of a terrorist attack if it was committed by locals? You know, it's still a big, massive failure of security, you know, and intelligence. So for me, it doesn't change.
Down to the same thing.
Yeah, because at some point, the government is admitting, like, yes, there's our intelligence officers on the ground did not take charge. But at the same time, on this other end, the government says, like, we have done well. Done well where? Done well where? Between Westgate and now. And I think this is where sometimes I think the media needs to take charge, because it's not about advising Mr. Kenyatta. For his relatives, I can excuse him because he did not choose them. But his advisors, he chose them. You know, if he did not choose
I think also, I mean, in terms of coverage, it's important, I think, that the media does not isolate Mpeketoni from all the other attacks that have happened, you know, and we need to see the continuum, you know, that these problems are systemic problems. They're not just problems that are associated with just one attack, you know, and we need to also ask about the government's responses to this. From Usalama Watch, you know, which seems not to have helped too much in curbing attacks, to Nyumba Kumi, which somehow the discussion on that has disappeared. These are the things they're saying, that's how they're responding.
And you know, they've put themselves in a position where information coming especially from the security agencies is received with some skepticism. You're like, okay, so he says 14, is it really 14? You know, is it this really? There's always a sense of you don't trust the information that's coming through. You want to dig, you want to find out for yourself. And that just continues to erode the faith that everybody has in this security agency. Somebody is also asking, so what are the solutions? We've criticized, we've said all these things. So going forward, today, if you were to be the advisors of President Kenyatta, you're right there with him.
Public inquiry.
Public inquiry.
Proper.
Even Kenyan, everybody has told the president, overhaul the entire security from the top. You've seen even the clerics. I've spoken about it.
Stop the blame game, yeah?
Yeah, even religious leaders have told him, overhaul the security. But
has that ever happened anywhere in the world if we just do a whole overhaul, everybody out?
Because, listen, this is not a one-off thing that has happened.
Okay.
We've had problems, and I think in the Standard, even this week, from when this happened yesterday, we showed you a chronology of events
true.
Of how these things have been happening.
Yes.
So until when will we get things...
but to overhaul, and this is my point, to overhaul the machinery, you need to know what the problem is with it. You know, and this is why it's important.
So what is your immediate cause
Let's
of
sit
action?
down and appoint a proper, credible inquiry to look into all these incidents. The president promised it. You know, after Westgate, he promised it, and he hasn't delivered. It's a promise he has ignored. You know, initially he said, "Oh well, Parliament is doing its own." You know, well, that has gone. So he promised it. Have a proper inquiry, understand where the problem is. What happened after 9/11 in the U.S.? They had the equivalent of a public inquiry, you know, that went round and found out, you know, where were the intelligence
like Homeland Security Department,
and then had proposals, you know, recommendations of what you change. You know, for us, it's let's fire a few guys here and there. But the system is retained as it is. It hasn't fundamentally changed in the last, 50 years. It's been the same bloody system.
One more thing I don't buy is this idea of when somebody speaks up, you're told, give a solution. I mean, people, by voting in, you are voting the government in to give you solutions. Yeah, because one more thing. Right. No, I mean, I hate all. I dislike. I dislike all politicians equally. Yeah. I'm free of all any prejudice. Yes. But the thing is, when the opposition comes and starts making noise, then the opposition is told, give us solutions. When the opposition comes with solutions, they say, no, you're not in government. It is our duty to run the country. You see, so this idea of telling people it's so defeatist. Give you solutions. The government has the resources. When we pay taxes, we are giving the government all our. I mean, we put our faith in the government to give us the solutions to do it. I mean, this road is impassable. Give us solutions. What solutions? Am I supposed to go and buy a truck and start building the road? I mean, this idea.
Good point.
The government, no.
I like one. I mean, there's another thing. I know it's a bit controversial. I remember when Code for a while has been saying that this is about our forces in Somalia, and we need to pull them back, and somehow that will stop the attacks. I saw even Peter Kenneth had put out a statement saying that we should rethink our presence in Somalia and stuff. I personally think it's pretty naive to think that if you got out of Somalia that Al-shabaab would leave you alone. You know, we were attacked way before we went to Somalia. You know, and the fact is, if you don't deal with Al-shabaab, you know, they have said time and again they don't recognize national borders. Their ambitions are to create caliphates across Africa. You know, we know they're in cahoots with Boko Haram, with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So it's the talk of let's just get out seems to me to be quite naive, you know. Yeah. And again, these are some of the issues that would be investigated and surfaced by a proper inquiry that looks into things like even causes. You know, why is it that this is happening? You know, and enables the public and policy chiefs to understand these are the problems we have, and here is how we can go about resolving them, not just through making statements or declaring, you know, Nyumba Kumi from nowhere. Or
and before we take a break, I want to hear from both of you as well in as far as, you know, if in fact Al-shabaab has claimed responsibility. Raila and other leaders have called for withdrawal from Somalia. Do you feel that is... Do you think that's the way to go?
When we raised that issue last week here, I said that is a debate we need to have. It's a conversation that we need to have. Because, as you know, I talked of the spending in terms of what we are spending for our soldiers in Somalia. It's different from what we used to spend when we went in. Because now our forces are integrated into AMISOM, and they're part of AMISOM. So it's the amount of money we are spending to sustain them there is shouldered by AMISOM, and we are almost just giving maybe half or a quarter of what we used to give. So it's something that we need to do. It's a conversation we can have. We cannot just come out from the blues and just say we are now done. No, we need to take stock and find out whether for sure we've done the mission we went to carry out in Somalia has been achieved. If it hasn't, then we will need to know how far we can go, because this is a conversation. This issue of getting into Somalia now is out of our hands. It is something that now is being dealt by the African states. So it is a conversation we need to place on the table of the African states, whether we feel that has been attained or not. Okay. If we can't do that, then because there are very many things that have come into play, because now it's not a local issue, it has taken an international angle. So it's something that we'll need a conversation to
Clay, very briefly before we go on break.
No, I think the only thing that actually annoys me or pisses me off is it's not even Al-shabaab being there. I think what we need to do is actually work. I mean, it's not about Kenyan forces being in Somalia or not, because you can bring them, but will we actually make sure that people are secure here? Because that is the main thing. Yeah. As Gadara says, these guys don't recognize any borders. You know, they can strike. You can bring back the soldiers here, and then they'll say, okay, the KDF can come back. But then they'll say, like, okay, fine, for the atrocities that you performed during that time, we're still going to attack you.
Actually, it's not even about the atrocities that you performed. You have to understand that this, I mean, they've hooked up with Al-Qaeda. They're part and parcel. They're actually a Al-Qaeda franchise in East Africa. They're not looking at just Somalia. You know, they think all of this should be governed by Sharia law, by their particular interpretation of what it is. They're not going to leave you alone simply because you don't have forces in Somalia.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a short break. When we return, we're going to also just look at the bigger picture. State of the nation as we stand. The rally is still planned out to continue. Sabasaba is fast approaching. Stay with us right here on Morning Express. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to Morning Express. We are on the newsroom with my panelists this morning. Been talking about the Mpeketoni attacks and more so what we've heard from the government and the response from the security agencies as well. But for the next few moments, we want to just focus on the state of the nation, gentlemen. Satao, for those who may not know, that very huge, popular, important part of Kenya's heritage gone just like that, and the question of poaching still part of this a conversation that the country is still having, you know, at a time when there's so many other issues. We came from the budget, now we have insecurity, we still have corruption, we have poaching. The state of the nation, Martin, where does Kenya go from here?
It's very worrying. We have created a situation whereby we are hostage to some kind of crisis, and we are fighting to get out of a crisis. Last week when we spoke about the issue of the national holidays, we said even the president himself looks so insecure, so that he has to be caged in some whatever thing, that ugly thing that Anu was talking about. Yet this week I was just seeing my spiritual leader, the Pope, was ditching his bulletproof mobile. Says he doesn't need to worry about anything, that anybody's going to kill him. And this is a man who is always a target. So he says, if the Pope is ditching his bulletproof, why are we trying to cage our president? So it's something that we have created a very hostile situation, in that we are creating tension even among our people. I know even with that kind of situation, I'm sure even the president now is also paranoid, because he must be feeling very, very bad in what is happening in the country. I was watching him when he was delivering that statement yesterday, and for me, he didn't look himself. He looked very worried, somebody who's not very disturbed. And we do not need that kind of image at this point in time. We need to breathe some fresh air in this country to be able to ensure that people go about their business without feeling that they are either insecure or a bomb or something is going to explode the next minute. People must go on, they must create a situation and an atmosphere whereby people will go on with their business without looking back and trying to find out what is going to happen the next minute. So that kind of atmosphere we've created is something that we need to break it off. And we must have statements even from our leaders that inspire confidence, that bring about some hope, that bring about some light, so that people cannot live in a situation whereby they feel something is going to happen the next minute. That is not what we should accept. Yes, we are not in an election mood. We have 5 years that this government has to go on, and we have 5 years of projects that people have to deal with. We have a budget to run. People have to live their lives. So we have to create that atmosphere in whatever way we're going to do it.
I think on the issue of poaching, the fact is we are losing our heritage, you know, and even worse is this poaching has been linked to Al-shabaab activities, so the terrorism that we were discussing earlier. You know, that in the report by, I think it was the Elephant Action League, that's been cited also by the UN and stuff, that also essentially says that Al-shabaab is part of the network that is getting a lot of revenues. I think it was something like 40% of the revenues from the illegal export of wildlife and wildlife products. So it is a national security problem, the poaching. You know, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys will remember the Dennis Onsarigo piece, his documentary, I think it was called Poachers and Butchers, you know, that says that the government knows the 11 kingpins who are behind poaching. It knows who they are and it's protecting them. You know, Dr. Richard Leakey said the same thing the other day. You know, he said these guys are operating with impunity because government is protecting them. They know. So in as much as they keep doing that, the president and his cohorts aren't acting against the people they know are responsible for the poaching, they are aiding and abetting the terror activities that are happening here. And they shouldn't run away from it. And we should be at the forefront, and the press should be at the forefront of pointing these things out. This was your own report that said, well, this is what GOK is doing, you know. So we need to keep insisting that all these things are linked. You know, those linkages exist. Yeah. You know, and there's no way we are going to resolve our security problems if we're going to sit back and let the poaching issue continue as it's doing.
So that's poaching issue is the animals, the elephant in the room. Actually, as Mutua points out, like there's a lot of everybody is living in fear. Probably even the Kenyan's wild animals. Everybody's living in fear because forget about even that it's Al-shabaab or it's funding the activities, but it just shows like a line of insecurity from this national parks to people's homes, you know, to buses everywhere. There's a lot of insecurity in this country. But the funny thing is that when you point that one out, somebody still wants to tell you like, oh, you are against the government or you're not supporting the government, you see. And these things can be seen. And I think I'm seeing like in maybe in 2 or 3 months, there's some newspapers which are actually people are going to start branding them anti-government and stuff like that and pro-government, because now you're trying to put the media in a box that you have to report this way, you see. And I think that is also wrong, because...
So it's a deeper problem the country has in general. It's not just the government, it's everybody's psyche and where everybody's mindset is at in as far as...
Yeah, because right now even the government itself is inciting the people. I mean, when you tell people that the people who are killed in Mpeketoni are not Kenyans, they belong to one ethnic community. I am very sure, I don't know which ethnic community...
Did they not say they were not Kenyans?
I mean, that is the message you're sending, because I believe that they were Kenyans. But if you come out and tell me that it was ethnic profiling, I believe that they were Kenyans, not ethnic, not a particular community that was being targeted. You see, when you do that, then actually you're trying to incite Kenyans like, okay, fine, this particular community, you guys are being targeted already. You're pitting Kenyans against one another, because you're supposed to address this issue that Kenyans have been killed in Mpeketoni, not a particular, people of a particular community. Because when the Likoni attacks, that boy who was he came from Western Kenya. I never heard anybody say like, oh, terrorists are, it's ethnic profiling. The people who have died from different.
But Claire, I think we're allowing them again to sort of dictate the terms of our discussions, you know, and this is what I talk about when I say they're distracting. You know, now everybody's going to be talking about
ethnic profiling,
this or the other, but we are missing the major point of where the failures are, you know. And again, taking this back to what I was talking about before on poaching. I mean, I think it was a year ago when we discovered that there's actually ivory stuff in State House,
Mombasa,
you know, and nobody asked, what is it doing there? You know, why do you have 100-kilogram task, you know, in the First Lady's office, you know, or in the President's office? You know, these are questions. I think further, I mean, to go with what Cleo had said before about the sort of linkages in between, look at things like Anglo-leasing, you know, which dealt with security contracts, you know, and now we see the effects of when the government is stayed off actually enhancing the abilities of security forces to react, to equip them, actually steals this money. This is what we are paying for now.
All right, let's talk about CORD a bit as far as what they've been, the rallies they've been, holding around the country. Saba is coming up. And when you hear, like for example in Mombasa, describing it as a consultative rally and that all they want is consultations, are these going to happen in the place when you are standing and addressing people? Because that's what consultation is happening at that particular point. Are we, as the media as well, just going with it? You're told this, you report, yes, today a consultative rally, or are we actually breaking it down that yes, this is what is being said, but this is what actually is, the motive or what is in pushing this?
Mr. Mutua has covered this day for so many years.
CORD is an opposition, is in the opposition.
Correct.
The opposition politicians are in politics for power. First, let's agree on that. Politics is about power. You win and you lose. When you win, you take power. When you lose, you fight back to regain power. So CORD are in the opposition.
So and they're fighting to regain power?
Their business is to, we pay them, by the way, to being in the opposition, to oppose this government. We pay them.
To oppose on how the country is being run, or to oppose to just discredit to get into power?
Whichever means they're going to use, it is up to their business. We cannot script for them how they are going to oppose this government. It is their business to oppose government. And it's up to government to govern and be able to show direction, show leadership. That is their business. They are not supposed to cry wolf. They're in government. They're supposed to govern, take charge of government, and you have power. Why can't you use your power to lead Kenya? That is their business. And the work of opposition, we pay them, I'm telling you again. Using taxpayers' money to oppose this government. That is their work. That is their JV.
So they're doing their job now.
They're doing their job. It is up to the other side to be able to outdo them and to endear them to Kenya.
I think in terms of coverage of this, what saddens me is that there is the substance of what is said or what is proposed, in as much as it has any substance, is pretty much ignored, and we deal with the realm of the politics of it. So CORD has suggested a national dialogue. That's what they're pushing for. Initially the president said yes. Then he said no. Then I think at some point he said yes again and no again. The other day I saw Isaac Ruto, the governor, saying yes, we should have this national dialogue. He's not CORD, And I think I'd read somewhere the government itself had initially proposed
they had been planning.
But now that substance has been taken away. It's all about the politics. And this is where our media fails us. It's because the focus is on the politics. The focus is just on the politics. It's CORD versus Jubilee, not on the issues that are there. And if the issue is simply, let's get around the table and talk. I think if we framed it that way, even a lot of people might have big difficulty saying, actually, why don't you want to sit down and say? We do need a dialogue. We do need to sit down and deal with the issues that are confronting us. And I'm not particularly for the sort of necessary confrontational approach that I think CORD is taking, but it is their right to push for it, But let's not forget the substance of what it is that they are saying they are pushing for.
Mutua says, however they do it, let them do it.
No, okay, fine. I believe what Mutua does not suggest anything like probably use a military or use force or use violence. And
absolutely not.
I know, not violence.
If you use, if you try unconstitutional means, the law will take its course.
Yeah, it will.
It's supposed to take its course. If by trying to get to power, CORD uses unorthodox means, it is upon government to use constitutional means to deal with that situation.
All right, finally, your thoughts?
Yeah, my argument has been like, okay, fine. It does not mean that when the government is behaving as if when they sit down to talk, this guy is going to twist them and I'm going to tell them, like, hold them hostage and say, like, okay, fine, you give me this. or you don't leave this room. Because I believe talks can fail. They can call for that dialogue and talks will fail. It does not mean that, okay, fine, you call for these talks and you have to get everything that you want. But you see, that is what the government, the government or the riffraffs who speak for the government tend to portray, you see. And the other thing also, like, oh, CORD has declared a national holiday, and then they start fretting over it. Of course, yes, CORD has no powers to declare a national holiday, a public holiday. So why are you see, this is how they tend to dictate. I want to agree with Gadara to a point, to dictate what we actually cover now. Yeah, because now they start talking like, oh, the CORD has no power to declare a national holiday. Of course, yes, we know that. Yeah. So why are you fretting over it?
But also, this national dialogue should not just be between Jubilee and CORD.
Yes,
should somebody did mention it.
I think he hosted Reverend
Njoya,
who said, like, everybody should be involved.
Yeah, that was very important, because so I think we're losing it to just the politics. Yeah.
So it's a national dialogue.
Absolutely, that's what I was saying. The Jubilee government is losing a very important opportunity to diffuse all these things. Yeah. Because what would happen? Call everybody around the table, bring religious leaders, CORD will not bulldoze everything on the table, because there will be other players on that. And it's something you will just diffuse there.
Didn't we have a national conversation on wage bill?
Actually, that's what I was going to say. The wage bill debate, it seemed to be very controversial to them, although there are questions as to whether it was a legitimate debate. Okay. For this one, where we are facing so many issues and so many problems, I think it's important that everybody gets together and that we take away the political fuel from...
Yeah, call even Mr. Gadara to that.
But have a public inquiry.
And somebody saying what you Team Africa on Twitter saying the media's focus is on politics at the expense of real issues facing Kenya. But that again, because we're taking the lead from what the politicians are putting on the table.
Set the agenda.
No,
perhaps that needs to change. We are glad you're watching Morning Express. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. How time flies.
I know.
But we'll see you next week. And stay with us, because when we return, Joshua Kemboy will be here to give us an update of what's happening in Brazil and the ball that's been kicked, or the ball being kicked around.